responsibilities of both agencies as it relates to mutual and automatic aid responses.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask another question. So, but just in practical terms, what the system we have now, I guess I hear reports that we have incidents where you have if it takes place in the city, a unit is coming from a distant city station as opposed to a closer one that may just happen to be located in the county. Is that currently the case?
There is instances where we're crossing jurisdictional boundaries because of the lack of communication between the dispatch centers. And again, that's what this agreement is all about. It's a really big deal to us to have this completed, and the supporting documents are the next part of this, and the next phase of this is to develop the actual dispatch procedures so that there's a higher level of communication between the dispatch centers.
Great. And do you have any kind of a time frame for getting this actually implemented?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I would hope that we could get this done in the next 30 to 45 days. We did the MOU in 3 weeks, so there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to move forward quickly.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you very much for your work for both departments in getting this done. I know at one point at a meeting last year, it was pointed out that this discussion's been going on for years, I think maybe as long as 8 years, and to see that you've made this amount of progress in that short a time is really great and is to be commended. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would like to echo those sentiments. I think you guys have done a lot of good work for us here in a very short amount of time. And before Mr. Zdanek gets away over there, I do want to point out he was just at a meeting in Washington. Am I not correct here, Mr. Zdanek? I'm correct? Okay. And one of the things that they did is sorry, Chief Breen, but I'm going to use the closest unit response terminology. They were able to really integrate 27 different jurisdictions around the District of Columbia. Was that fire and police? So it was full public safety without any changes in dispatch, without consolidating dispatch. Am I correct in that? So that's where I'd like to see us to go. I think technologically we can get there. This MOU is a great first step because it says, hey, this is where we're going to build off of, and technology can help fill in the gaps as we go along. But I think it would be also a good idea. I know that the city of Albuquerque, I don't know, within a few years, Councilor, I believe this is correct, that you added a new CAD system or implemented a new CAD system. Ours is a little older, but we're upgrading it at this point. At some point, we're going to need to have our capital cycles match up so that we can best utilize our tax dollars to spend on something that can be integrated across town. That's what I'd like to see anyway. If you look at the agenda here, we've kind of gone right through communications and right into the closest unit response item, and it makes sense because they're very related. We're all talking. In fact, we've talked a lot about communications today. Is there anything else that would you like to tell us a little bit about the actual MOU, some of the provisions for the public or time frames?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, it's a comprehensive document that gets into not only the legal aspects as it relates to combining or having that mutual and automatic aid responses, but it's inclusive, and right now we just have the agreement completed. The next step in this is to complete or develop and agree upon the interagency standard operating guidelines, and that'll cover the actual mutual and automatic aid dispatch procedures, the automatic aid areas where we will respond in place of the county and the county will respond in place of the city, how we're going to do incident command, resource management, and incident communications, special operations. We're also looking at fire investigations and fire code enforcement, and it'll also identify minimum agency standards such as professional qualifications so that when we're responding into each other's jurisdictions, you're getting a standardized response. It may not be exact, but it'll be standardized. And that's professional qualifications, response configurations, company staffing or unit staffing, company standards so that we're all training to the same standard, maintaining a minimum response time criteria, and standardizing our dispatch protocols. So it's comprehensive in that fashion. The last step in this is the one that we've just discussed, sir, and that is developing and implementing strategies that increase cooperation and coordination, such as having a single dispatch center or using available technology so that we can do it from two separate locations. I must say that having two separate dispatch centers offers some system redundancy, which is a real plus for this metro area. Last summer, the City of Albuquerque 911 center went down a couple of times, and the calls are automatically switched over to the county. They covered those calls until we could get our system rebooted and up and running again, and that was fundamental in ensuring that the delivery of 911 services was seamless.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor Sanchez? No? Oh, okay. Thank you. Commissioner De La Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the work that's been done also, so I echo what councilors and commissioners have already stated, and I'm an advocate and a proponent for closest unit response, but I think we also have to be aware that there may be some costs associated as we move forward. And we need to be cognizant of that, and I think that financial analysis has not occurred yet. And I think we have an obligation to do that so that we know exactly what we're talking about. It's one thing to execute an MOU, and another to make sure that financially we're okay to accomplish those tasks, those missions. Which brings me to the topic that Councilor Sanchez brought up earlier, and I think it's something that we have to discuss. So I also want to thank the councilor for bringing the issue of District 29 up. I understand from staff that the city has given the county notice, and I'm assuming that it's been formal notice. Mr. Zadanek, is it a formal notice that we received at your level? Because I don't think the commissioners have gotten a formal notice.
Commissioner, my understanding, the answer to that first question is I have received a termination notice of the IGA from the city.
The commission has not received anything formally, and I don't know if city councilors have been made aware that this is happening formally. Just so everybody's aware, this is going to probably cost Bernalillo County a couple of $1 million at least to take over or reestablish taking over District 29, formerly 9, County 9, and without any dialogue. At least not at the elected official level. And it is ultimately at the elected official level that we have to decide whether we can afford to do that or not, that there should have been some time to prepare for that $2 million hit. Now, I can appreciate that the city of Albuquerque has financial constraints right now based on the economy, but Bernalillo County does as well. And we have our own challenges related to the jail and whatnot. So I think that dialogue needs to take place, as well as the issue of what is all of this going to cost. Because while we all know it's a good idea, and we all know that it's an important step forward, what does it mean financially? 29 is a good example where it hasn't happened well in terms of communication with each other's governments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, I have to say that this Station 29 issue has been floating around for a while, and perhaps I was remiss in not discussing it with my fellow commissioners, having just been a candidate for the last, until January, basically. I was under the assumption that it was pretty widely known, and frankly was kind of surprised last Thursday when I viewed one of the committees of the whole from the council that there had been some poor communications. And I think that's all of our faults. And I would include myself in that, because making the assumption that everybody knows what's going on is kind of a dangerous thing to do anyway. Councilor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, would you, if you could take a moment to describe what are the conversations that you all have had back and forth